The world is not ignoring you. It is responding to you, exactly as you have trained it to. That's the part no one tells you. You think people disrespect you for no reason. You think you're being overlooked, underestimated, pushed aside by chance. But what if none of that is random? What if every reaction you get is a reflection? Think about your last few interactions. Someone interrupted you mid-sentence. Someone didn't take you seriously. Someone dismissed your opinion like it didn't matter. And maybe you felt it, that small moment of frustration, that silent question in your mind. Why does this keep happening to me? Now, here's the uncomfortable truth. It's not just happening to you. It's happening because of you. Not your intentions, not your effort, but your internal positioning. Because before people hear you, they read you. Before they understand your words, they feel your presence. And in that instant, they decide how to treat you, not consciously, but instinctively. Humans are constantly scanning for signals. Who is confident? Who is uncertain? Who leads? Who follows? Who can be ignored? And who cannot? And the answers are rarely found in what you say. They are found in what you project, the way you stand, the way you react, the way you handle silence, the way you respond to pressure. Every small detail sends a message, and those messages create a pattern that teaches people exactly how to treat you. If you hesitate, they take control. If you over-explain, they question you. If you seek approval, they lower your value. But if you move with certainty, if you speak without needing validation, if you remain calm, when others expect you to react, something shifts, subtly at first, then completely. People pause before interrupting you. They listen more carefully. They think twice before crossing boundaries. Not because you demanded respect, but because you became someone who naturally commands it. This is the hidden game, the one most people never realize they are playing. They focus on external strategies, speak better, work harder, be more impressive, but none of that works consistently because the real game is internal, and it's being played every second, whether you're aware of it or not. You don't change your life by forcing people to treat you differently. You change your life by changing the way you see yourself so deeply that your behavior transforms without effort. And when your behavior changes, your signals change. And when your signals change, people respond differently. This is how reality rearranges itself, not through force, not through confrontation, but through perception. Here's the dangerous part. Most people are completely unaware of the signals they're sending. They think they're being polite, but they're seen as weak. They think they're being humble, but they're seen as unsure. They think they're being nice, but they're treated as replaceable. And because they don't see it, they repeat it again and again. Until it becomes their identity. But the moment you become aware, everything changes. You start to notice patterns. You start to see why certain people command attention without trying. Why some individuals walk into a room and the energy shifts. Why others speak and everyone listens. It's not magic. It's positioning. And once you understand how to control that, you stop chasing respect. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to convince the world of your value because you no longer need to. You become it. In this video, you're going to uncover the hidden mechanics behind human perception. You'll understand why people treat you the way they do, and more importantly, how to shift it. Silently, strategically. Completely. Because once you start thinking about yourself the right way, the world has no choice but to follow your lead. People don't respond to reality. They respond to perception. And this is where most people lose without even realizing they're playing a game. You might believe that your intelligence should speak for itself, that your hard work should be noticed, that your intentions should be understood. But human behavior doesn't work like that. Before anyone evaluates your abilities, they evaluate your presence. Before logic enters the conversation, emotion has already made a decision. This happens in seconds. You walk into a room, and without saying a word, people begin forming conclusions. Not based on facts, but based on signals. How you carry yourself, how you look at others, how comfortable you seem in your own space. These micro signals create a perception, and once that perception is formed, it becomes your reality in their eyes. This is why the people can say the exact same thing and get completely different reactions. One is taken seriously, the other is ignored. Same words, different presence. Now here's where it becomes uncomfortable. Most of the signals you send are unconscious. You don't think about them, but others feel them. When you over-explain your point, trying to be clear. You may actually be signaling uncertainty when you rush to fill silence. Trying to avoid awkwardness, you may be signaling discomfort when you constantly look for agreement. Trying to connect, you may be signaling dependence, and people pick up on this instantly, not logically, but instinctively, because humans are wired to detect confidence and hesitation, strength and weakness, control and instability. This is why perception is faster than logic. It bypasses thinking. It creates a feeling, and that feeling becomes your identity in that moment. Now consider this. You can be highly capable, but if your presence feels uncertain, people will doubt you. You can be kind, but if your behavior feels submissive, people will take advantage. You can be valuable, but if you act like you're replaceable, people will treat you that way. Because perception overrides truth, and once someone sees you a certain way, they start interacting with you based on that image. They interrupt more, they listen less, they challenge more often, not because they analyze you deeply, but because your signals made it easy. This is the invisible law, the one that shapes every interaction. And once you see it, you stop focusing only on what you say, you start becoming aware of how you are experienced. Because that experience is what people respond to. Everything you experience on the outside begins with something invisible on the inside. Your identity. Not the identity you show people, not the version you try to present, but the quiet, unspoken belief you carry about yourself, the one that runs in the background, shaping everything. Most people never question it. They just live through it. I'm not confident. I'm not respected. I'm not the type people take seriously. These are not just thoughts. They are instructions, and your behavior follows them automatically. This is why identity is so powerful. Because it doesn't ask for permission. It operates silently. If you believe you are someone who gets ignored, you will speak in a way that invites interruption. If you believe you are not respected, you will tolerate subtle disrespect without realizing it. If you believe you are replaceable, you will act like you need approval to stay relevant. And here's the dangerous part. You won't even notice it because it feels normal. It feels like this is just how I am. But in reality, it's just a script you learn over time. Through past experiences, through failures, through moments where you felt small and never corrected it. And now that script is running your life. It determines how you enter a room, how you respond to pressure, how you handle conflict, even how you see yourself when no one is watching. This is why people get stuck. They try to change their actions without changing their identity. They try to speak more confidently, but still feel unsure inside. They try to set boundaries, but still fear rejection, and eventually they fall back because the script pulls them back to what feels familiar. This is the loop. Identity gives behavior, gives results, gives reinforced identity over and over again. If your identity says, I'm not taken seriously, your behavior reflects that. Then people respond accordingly. And those responses confirm your belief. The cycle continues. But here's the shift that changes everything. You don't get treated how you deserve. You get treated how you subconsciously allow. And what you allow is shaped by your identity. If your internal standard is low, your external reality will match it. If your identity tolerates disrespect, your environment will reflect that tolerance. But the moment your identity shifts, your behavior changes. Without force, you don't try to act differently. You simply can't act the same anymore. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing approval. You stop shrinking in moments where you used to feel small. Not because you learned a trick, but because you no longer see yourself that way, and people notice. Because your signals change. Your tone becomes more certain. Your reactions become more controlled. Your presence becomes more grounded. This is the beginning of real transformation, not external, but internal. And once your identity changes, the world starts responding to you differently, without you asking it to, whether you notice it or not. People are always testing you, not in obvious ways, not like a challenge you can clearly see, but through small, subtle moments that seem insignificant or reveal everything. Someone cuts you off while you're speaking. Someone makes a dismissive comment. Someone ignores your message or delays their response. These are not random behaviors. They are tests, and most of the time, they're not even conscious. Humans are wired to understand boundaries, to figure out where they stand and how far they can go. So they probe, gently at first, almost invisibly, and your reaction tells them everything they need to know. If you laugh it off when you feel disrespected, you signal tolerance. If you over-explain to defend yourself, you signal uncertainty. If you react emotionally, you signal instability. And once people read these signals, they adjust their behavior. They interrupt more often. They push further. They take more space, while you take less. Not because they decided to disrespect you, but because your responses made it acceptable. This is the part most people misunderstand. They think respect is something you ask for, or something you earn over time. But in reality, it's something you demonstrate through boundaries. And boundaries are not just words. They are patterns, consistent, controlled patterns of behavior. If you fail small tests, you invite bigger ones. If you tolerate minor disrespect, you create space for greater disrespect, because people don't operate based on what you say once. They operate based on what you consistently allow. Now here's where power shifts. When you stop reacting emotionally and start responding with control. When you don't rush to defend yourself, but also don't tolerate being diminished. When your behavior becomes steady, predictable in strength, not in weakness, people begin to recalibrate. They hesitate before crossing lines. They observe you more carefully. They adjust their tone, their approach, their behavior, because something about you has changed. You are no longer easy to read. No longer easy to push, and that uncertainty creates respect. Not forced. Not demanded, but naturally established through how you carry yourself. Because in every interaction, people are asking one silent question: how far can I go with this person? And your behavior is always answering. Silence makes most people uncomfortable. That's why they rush to fill it. They talk too much. They explain too much. They react too quickly. Because in silence, there is uncertainty. And most people are afraid of uncertainty. But what if silence isn't weakness? What if silence is control? There are two types of silence. The first is passive silence. This is the silence of fear. You stay quiet because you don't want conflict. You avoid speaking because you're unsure of yourself. You hold back because you're worried about how you'll be judged. This kind of silence feels heavy, and people can sense it. It signals hesitation. It signals discomfort. It signals lack of confidence. But there is another kind of silence, a far more powerful one. Strategic silence. This silence is intentional. It's not about avoiding. It's about observing. When you stop rushing to speak, something interesting happens. Other people start revealing themselves. They talk more. They explain more. They fill the space you chose to leave open, and in doing so, they show you who they are, their intentions, their insecurities, their patterns. Silence becomes information. While they are busy exposing themselves, you are learning. This is power, because the person who talks the most usually gives away the most. But the person who speaks less remains unpredictable, and unpredictability creates presence. Think about the moments when someone says very little, but when they finally speak, everyone listens. Why? Because their words are not diluted. They are measured. Intentional. Weighted. In a world where people speak constantly, silence becomes rare, and rare things attract attention. Strategic silence also shifts control in conversations. When someone says something challenging, most people react immediately. They defend. They argue. They try to prove themselves. But when you pause, when you allow a moment of silence before responding, you break the pattern. You create space. And in that space, you gain control, because now the interaction is no longer automatic. It becomes deliberate. Your response becomes a choice, not a reaction, and people feel that difference. They sense that you are not easily triggered, not easily pressured, not easily controlled. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you choose when to speak. And more importantly, why? You don't fill silence just to feel comfortable. You let silence exist because you are comfortable. That alone communicates something powerful. It says, I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to rush. I am in control of my space. And when people feel that, they adjust. They listen more carefully. They think before speaking. They become more aware of how they interact with you, because silence, when used correctly, creates presence without effort. It establishes authority without words, and it gives you something most people don't have: time to observe, to think, and to respond with intention. In the end, silence is not about saying less. It's about saying only what matters. And letting everything else work in your favor. The fastest way to lose power in any situation is to lose control of your emotions. Because the moment your emotions take over, you stop choosing your behavior and start reacting. Most people don't notice when this happens. It feels natural. Someone disrespects you, you react. Someone challenges you, you defend. Someone provokes you, you respond instantly. But in those moments, you are no longer in control. The situation is controlling you, and people can see it. Even if you try to hide it, your tone changes, your expressions shift, your energy becomes unstable, and instability is the opposite of power. Think about it. When someone reacts emotionally, they become predictable. You know how to push them. You know what triggers them. You know how to control the interaction. But when someone remains calm, when they don't react the way you expect, everything changes. Because now, they are unpredictable. And unpredictability creates distance. It creates caution. It forces people to think before they act. This is where emotional control becomes power, not by suppressing emotions, but by managing them. Feeling something internally without letting it control your external behavior. That moment between what happens and how you respond, that's where control lives. And most people don't have access to it. They collapse the gap. They react instantly. But when you create space, when you pause, when you allow yourself to observe before responding, you gain something rare. Choice. You are no longer reacting. You are deciding. And that decision changes everything because your response becomes intentional. Measured. Aligned with your position, not your impulse. This is what separates reactive people from strategic ones. Reactive people give their power away in moments. Strategic people protect it. They don't engage in every conflict. They don't respond to every comment. They don't allow every situation to affect them. Because they understand something important. Not every reaction is worth your energy. And not every situation deserves your attention. Emotional control is not about being cold. It's about being disciplined. It's about knowing that your reactions are signals and choosing signals that reflect strength, not instability. When you master this, people start interacting with you differently. They become more careful, more respectful, more aware, because they realize something. You are not easy to influence. Not easy to provoke, not easy to control. And that realization changes the entire dynamic without you saying a word. There is one signal that silently lowers your value in almost every interaction: neediness. Not obvious neediness, not the kind people openly admit, but the subtle kind. The kind that hides behind politeness, behind over-agreeing, behind the constant need to be liked. Most people don't realize they're doing it. They think they're being friendly. They think they're being respectful. But underneath that behavior, there's a quiet dependency, a need for approval, and people can feel it. They may not consciously think, this person needs validation, but they sense something slightly off. Because when you need approval, you adjust yourself too quickly. You agree when you don't fully agree. You stay quiet when you should speak. You tolerate things that don't align with you. And over time, this creates a pattern where others don't take you seriously, not because they want to disrespect you, but because your behavior doesn't require respect. It adapts too easily. It bends too quickly. This is why detachment is so powerful. Detachment is not about being distant. It's not about acting cold or uncaring. It's about being independent. Independent from how people perceive you. Independent from needing their validation to feel secure. When you are detached, you don't chase approval. You don't adjust yourself just to fit in. You don't feel pressure to be liked by everyone. And that changes everything. Because now your behavior becomes consistent, not influenced by the reactions of others. You speak honestly, even if it creates tension. You hold your position, even if it's uncomfortable. You walk away, even if it means losing something, and people notice that. Because it's rare. Most individuals are constantly adjusting themselves to be accepted. Very few are comfortable being themselves, regardless of the outcome. And that comfort, that self-contained confidence, creates respect. Not forced respect, but natural respect. Because when you don't need anything from people, you become harder to control, harder to influence, harder to manipulate, and that creates a shift. People start valuing your presence more, not because you're trying to impress them, but because you're not trying at all. You are simply grounded. This is the paradox. The less you need approval, the more you receive it. The less you chase attention, the more it comes to you, because people are drawn to those who are already complete, who are not seeking something from them. Who are not dependent on their reactions. Detachment gives you freedom to act based on your standards, not your fears, freedom to speak without needing validation, freedom to exist without constantly adjusting. And in that freedom, you become something most people are not. Unshaken. And that is power. Before you say a single word, you are already communicating. Your presence speaks first. And in many cases, it speaks louder than anything you will say after. Most people underestimate this. They believe communication starts with words, but in reality, it starts with how to exist in a space. The way you walk, the way you sit, the way you look at people, or avoid looking at them. These details seem small, but together, they form an impression that people feel instantly. When you move too quickly, you signal urgency. When you fidget, you signal discomfort. When you speak too much, you signal a need to be heard. But when your presence is controlled, everything slows down. Not physically, but perceptually. You enter a space without rushing. You take your time before responding. You maintain eye contact without tension. And this creates something subtle, but powerful: stability. People begin to feel that you are grounded, that you are not easily affected by the environment, and that feeling creates a tension. Because in a world where most people are reactive, stability stands out. Controlled presence is not about acting. It's not about pretending to be confident. It's about removing unnecessary movement, unnecessary reactions, unnecessary noise. It's about becoming deliberate. Every movement has intention. Every word has purpose. Every pause has meaning. Even silence becomes part of your presence. And people notice. They may not understand why, but they feel it. They feel that you are not trying to impress, not trying to compete, not trying to prove anything, and that absence of effort becomes your advantage because it signals something rare. Self-assurance. You are not looking for attention. So when attention comes, it feels earned. Not forced. This is why controlled presence changes how people respond to you. They listen more carefully. They interrupt less. They become more aware of their own behavior. Because your presence sets a tone, a quiet standard. And without saying it, you communicate something powerful. I am comfortable in my space. I don't need to rush. I don't need to prove. And when people feel that, they adjust themselves around you. Not because you asked them to, but because your presence made it clear. This is how influence begins. Not with words, but with how you carry yourself before the words ever arrive. Most people live their lives on autopilot. They react first. They think later, if at all. Someone insults them, they respond instantly. Someone challenges them, they argue immediately. Someone provokes them, they give away their energy before considering the consequences. This is emotional reaction. It feels natural. It feels unavoidable. It even feels justified. But it comes at a cost, because every reaction reveals something about you. Your triggers, your weaknesses, your expectations, your boundaries or lack thereof. And people notice, not consciously, perhaps, but instinctively. They adjust, they push, they exploit. This is where strategic intelligence separates the powerful from the reactive. Strategic intelligence is the ability to pause, to think beyond the immediate, to respond deliberately rather than react impulsively. It is understanding that every action, even your silence, is a signal. Every choice shapes perception. Every reaction can either give away power or reinforce it. Consider a simple scenario. Someone insults you in a meeting. Most will respond immediately, defend themselves, argue, become emotionally entangled. A strategically intelligent person pauses. They assess. They measure the impact. They consider the long-term consequences. And then they respond, if necessary. The difference is profound. In the first case, the reactive person loses power instantly. Their energy has been claimed. Their presence weakened. In the second case, the strategic person remains unshaken. Their response carries weight. Their presence is reinforced. They are no longer an easy target. Strategic intelligence is also about playing the long game. It's understanding that not every battle needs to be fought today. Not every slight needs correction immediately. Not every opinion of others deserves a reaction. Because influence is not created in moments. It is cultivated over time. Every decision, every pause, every carefully measured response builds a reputation for stability, control, and insight. And when people recognize it, they start to adjust automatically. They think twice before provoking. They hesitate before testing boundaries. They consider the consequences of their actions. In your presence, strategic intelligence is quiet, subtle, and often invisible. But it is more powerful than shouting, more effective than anger, more commanding than aggression. Because people may not remember every word you said, but they feel the weight of your restraint. They feel the power of your calculated presence. The reactive person gives power away with every uncontrolled emotion. The strategic thinker gains power silently, effortlessly, and this is the psychological advantage that few ever truly understand. It's not about being loud. It's not about winning arguments. It's about controlling the game before it even begins. Because in life, those who master the pause, who choose every response carefully, who act with deliberate intelligence, those people shape reality around them without the world ever realizing it. If the way the world treats you is a reflection of your internal positioning, then the most important battlefield is inside your own mind. Before you can command respect, before you can influence people, before you can be seen differently, you must first see yourself differently. This is the subtle, invisible work that most people ignore. It's easy to focus on external strategies, dress better, speak more persuasively, work harder. But none of these create lasting change if your internal position remains weak. Your internal position is the story you tell yourself about who you are, what you deserve, and how you allow others to treat you. It's the silent rules that govern your behavior. Before you even think, do you believe you deserve respect? Do you believe your boundaries matter? Do you believe that others' opinions are secondary to your self-worth? The answers to these questions determine everything. Because if you allow yourself to accept disrespect, even subtly, your actions will reflect it. Your tone will reflect it. Your presence will reflect it, and people will sense it instantly. Changing your internal position isn't about pretending to be confident. It isn't about forcing yourself to act like someone else. It's about realigning your beliefs with your values, about setting internal standards that are non-negotiable. Start with small shifts. Notice when you tolerate what you previously wouldn't. Notice when your self-worth depends on someone else's validation. Notice the moments you bend or over-explain just to keep the peace, and begin to correct them internally. Instead of asking, why do they treat me this way? Ask, what am I allowing? Every interaction becomes an opportunity to reinforce your new position. Every decision to stand firm, every controlled response, every intentional pause strengthens it. Eventually, it becomes automatic, not forced, not performative. It simply becomes who you are. And when your internal position is strong, everything around you starts to change. People listen more carefully. Boundaries are respected. Without explanation, opportunities appear without you chasing them. Because your energy now signals that you are not someone to be pushed. You are someone who expects respect, silently, naturally, someone who moves with quiet certainty, and whose presence cannot be ignored. This transformation begins quietly. It starts inside your mind. And once it takes hold, it radiates outward. Your internal position becomes the foundation of every interaction. It determines your influence, your authority, and how the world aligns with you. When you rewrite this script inside yourself, the world has no choice but to follow the new version of you, because perception is reality. And the first perception starts within. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your standards. Change them, and the world changes automatically. By now, you've seen a pattern. Every principle, every strategy, every psychological insight points to one truth. The world rearranges itself based on your internal positioning, not on what you demand, not on how loudly you assert yourself, not on how much you chase validation, but on the quiet, undeniable energy you carry. Imagine a room filled with people. Some speak constantly, some react immediately, some seek approval, hoping their value will be acknowledged. And then there's the person who doesn't seek, who doesn't react impulsively, who doesn't need anyone's validation to exist fully. That person is the standard, not because they say it, not because they try to prove it, but because they live it. The difference is profound. Most people spend their lives chasing respect, begging for recognition, explaining themselves endlessly, adjusting their behavior to fit others' expectations, and in doing so, they give away their power. But when you become the standard, everything shifts. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying your presence. You stop seeking permission to exist. Instead, you move with quiet certainty. Observe more than you react. Decide consciously instead of responding impulsively. And in that stillness, the world begins to respect your space. It begins to acknowledge your boundaries. It begins to align with your energy. This is not arrogance. It's not superiority. It is simply the natural result of internal authority, because the person who respects themselves automatically commands respect. The person who does not react to every slight controls interactions effortlessly. The person who does not seek approval becomes magnetic, influential, and unshakable. The lesson is clear. You do not need to fight the world. You do not need to convince it. You do not need to beg for your place. You simply need to occupy it fully, internally first. Externally will follow. Every pause, every controlled response, every act of detachment reinforces the standard. Every silent observation, every strategic choice signals your unshakable presence, and the most profound shift comes in your mind. When you no longer depend on others to validate your worth, when you no longer adjust yourself to meet external expectations, you are free to act with integrity, free to respond intentionally, free to command without demanding. This is the ultimate power. And it begins quietly, inside your thoughts, inside your beliefs, inside the identity you carry. Once you become the standard, the world will adjust, not because you forced it, not because you demanded it, but because the energy you emit leaves no other choice. So, stop seeking, stop chasing, stop explaining. Become someone who expects respect, moves with quiet certainty, observes more than reacts, and the world will rearrange itself, because when you change who you are inside, everything else follows. Take this with you. Carry it into every room, every interaction, every choice. The shift starts in you, and the ripple touches everything around you. You are no longer the seeker, you are the standard. And that is powered *.